How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a video on 10 cheap, underrated cars that cost less than £15,000. Now, I do feel that underrated is quite a subjective thing, but a lot of people have been asking me recently what cars I think are underrated, so I thought I would make this video and just put it all out there. I think each of these 10 cars are actually quite decent and maybe don't get as much love as they potentially deserve for what they are. Obviously, you may completely disagree with me, and if that's the case, let me know in the comments down below. Remember, I'm in the UK, so prices in other countries may differ, and remember that whenever you buy any second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, all that good stuff is important to remember. Remember to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe as well if you're new, but without further ado, let's get into the video. But before we get into the cars, I wanted to briefly tell you guys about the amazing and very kind sponsor of this video, Surfshark. Now, Surfshark provide a fast and easy to use VPN or virtual private network that is loaded with features that go above and beyond what the average VPN might provide. And it's simple to install and run on as many devices as you want with just one subscription. It enables you to browse the internet as if you are anywhere in the world, providing an additional layer of protection between yourself and the websites that you are browsing, meaning that your data is secured from hackers and nefarious websites with uncrackable encryption. But there is more to this, as the key benefit that I derive from VPNs, is a pretty basic one, is that I get to watch all of my shows on Netflix that I enjoy from around the world. I'm a fan of the Marvel movies, for example, so I just set the VPN to being in Canada, and then next thing I know, I no longer need a Disney Plus subscription. And the key thing is, it does all of that whilst providing the best internet speeds by default. So if you're interested, hit the link at the top of the description and enter the code CARSWITHJB for 83% off the subscription and 3 months for free. I mean, that is pretty sick. Also, just on a personal note, a massive thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring the video. I really do appreciate it. Now let's get on with the video. Starting us off at number 10, we have the Mazda MX-5 NC, specifically with the 2-litre inline-4 engine, putting out a humble 157 brake horsepower, which gets it from 0 to 60 in 7.6 seconds. The NC is the third generation MX-5, which often gets overlooked compared to other generations, when in reality, it's actually a very decent offering, which is recognised by the fact it won Car of the Year Japan on release in 2005 and was listed in Car and Driver's 10 Best from 2006 to 2013. It's had a few facelifts, and the 2013 update in particular gave it much more aggressive styling over the original, and even over the first facelift, but I think it may have been a little bit late as the car was a bit bubbly to begin with. As expected, the handling is noted as excellent by owners and journalists alike, and just generally when compared with the NA and NB, it really updated the MX-5 to the modern era, with its more modern interior and retractable hardtop roof. And of course, being an MX-5, there are plenty of potential modifications if you're that way inclined, whether you want to go track car or tuner or otherwise. These are listed for a minimum of around £4,000 in pre-facelift, guys, and at the £15,000 mark you'd be looking at some insane examples, so best to look at the 6 to 10k range for your average MX-5. Specialists note the 2-litre engine is the best to go for, and mention it's worth checking the oil level and listening for a rumbling crankshaft. Timing chain tensioners can also fail, and outside of that, the classic problem with these is rust, so be careful, but many experts I could find noted the best MX-5 you can buy is actually the Mark III. In ninth we have a car I've actually driven quite recently, the Toyota GT86, with its 2-litre Boxer 4 engine, putting out 197 brake horsepower, which gets from 0 to 60 in 7.4 seconds, only marginally quicker than the MX-5. The car was developed jointly by Toyota and Subaru, hence there's also the BRZ if you prefer that latter badge, and the Scion FRS in the US. It draws inspiration from classic Toyotas like the AE86 as a small, front-engined, rear-wheel drive sports car. A lot of people sleep on these, suggesting they're too slow, and while I can agree, having driven one, that they're not that quick off the line, they're intense fun to actually drive. You have bags of confidence while driving them, which lets you carry a lot of momentum through corners, and they give you a really raw, enjoyable driving experience overall. The fact that they're not that fast doesn't really factor in for me if the car is actively fun to drive. The interiors are a bit plasticky but reasonable too, and overall I'd say this is the ideal first sports car for many people, particularly if you plan on having a bit of fun at track days. £8,000 is around the minimum you'll find these listed for, and for 15 grand you're looking at examples with under 30,000 miles on the clock. As Toyotas, they've proven their reliability too, although it's worth checking second gear engages smoothly, as synchros have been known to go, so technicians recommend getting fresh fluid in when buying one of these. Next up we have the Volvo C30 T5 with its 2.5 litre turbocharged inline-5, which puts out 226 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds. Now I think this is underrated for multiple reasons. Firstly, that inline-5 sounds amazing and is shared with the Mark II Focus ST, and the RS got a slightly more savage iteration of it. Secondly, it actually looks really nice and unique in my opinion, quite a nice boxy shape with a really cool rear hatch design which apparently limits luggage space, but it also looks pretty good, so whatever. And thirdly, I've run a few insurance quotes on these and generally they come out cheaper than and plenty of other cars in this price range. Yes, I've said before that the interior is quite boring, but that's a small price to pay for this package. You'll generally find these listed at around the £8,000 mark, with anywhere between 50 to 80,000 miles on the clock depending on condition. There are a few known problems, particularly around the ABS and aircon systems, as well as the drive shafts being a weak point too. Worth also servicing the transmission if you go for an auto, as they need fresh oil every 50,000 miles. Generally, from what I can see on forums though, owners are pretty pleased with the reliability on these. In 7th is a car I've spoken about in a recent video, the Alfa Romeo Brera JTS with its 3.2 litre V6 engine, putting out 256 brake horsepower, which takes it to 60 in 6.8 seconds. It didn't receive too much attention on release, and the car was criticised for underperforming across the board in terms of speed and handling, which doesn't sound like it's an underrated car. But once Alfa took the car to Prodrive and let them work their magic on it with 500 limited edition examples, they made it into something much more fun to drive on the roads and, almost more importantly in this case, something actively desirable with better potential long-term values. The reason therefore why I think it's underrated is that it's actually really good looking as an Alfa, and it only seems to get better looking with age, and good looking old Alfas often fetch a fair bit once there's general agreement that they've reached classic status. In non-Prodrive spec you'll find these listed for around the £6,000 mark at the lower end, and 10 grand will easily get you into a Prodrive edition. Despite being an Alfa, it also doesn't have a particularly bad reliability history either, although a £3,000 timing chain service at 100,000 miles could bite you if you're not careful. Watch out for rust on the front subframe and knocks from the suspension, which are known issues, and just keep up the maintenance and hope that they increase in value one day in the future. One of my personal favourites coming in at number 6 is the VW Scirocco R with its 2 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine, putting out 261 brake horsepower, which provides a 0 to 60 time of 5.8 seconds. Now I say these are underrated, but partially feel like they were done a disservice by VW. As an R example, it does feel like it needed something above and beyond the GTS Scirocco, like all-wheel drive for example, which it didn't get. But owners and journalists alike absolutely rave about the car's performance and handling, and there's lots of positivity around the reliability too, as the DSG box is the main problem I could find on forums, with anything else sort of being a one-off issue. It has that great Scirocco shape mixed with more aggressive body styling like the diffuser and spoiler, a more performance focused interior, and it's quite rare with just under 700 on the roads here in the UK, yet despite all of this, I've proven in a previous video that it's actually quite cheap to insure as well. The minimum you'll find these listed for is around £10,000, and 15 grand will get you an example with around 40,000 miles on it. I'm definitely a fan of these and wouldn't mind one as a daily in the future. Kicking off the top 5 is the Peugeot RCZ-R with its 1.6 litre turbocharged inline-4, putting out 266 brake horsepower, which gets it to 60 in 5.7 seconds. The reason why I think this car is underrated is basically badge snobbery and a generally less than interesting interior. In reality, the car has received a bunch of awards for its performance, looks and general capability as a sports coupe, but it hasn't been that popular since release. It was originally just a concept car, but people loved it so they put it into production, and the R model is the most savage of the lot, the most powerful and performance focused RCZ available. It comes with Alcon brakes and suspension, massive weight savings over the standard car, and a Torsen front diff similar to that in the Mark II Focus RS. Plus, it's super rare in the UK with just 305 sold over here in total. That rarity became evident whilst making this video, as in the time I spent making it, the ones I had seen available for sub £15,000 disappeared, so here's one pretty close to that 15k mark with under 50,000 miles on it. Turbos and transmission are the key points to check on these, but when I say that, I'm talking about petrol RCZs more broadly, as of course the R has limited info on reliability. The key point noted by experts is that when they go up for sale, they generally get snapped up quickly, so if you're after one, you'll have to be quick. In 4th we have another of my personal favourites, the Porsche Cayman 987S with its 3.4 litre flat 6 engine, putting out 290 brake horsepower, in pre-facelift spec at least, that gets it from 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds. Of course, it's a far more well-loved car, and I've spoken about it in many previous videos, so I won't bang on about the different features, but for a car with its looks, capability, performance and badge, I would say it's worth way more than you actually pay for it. Having been in one, the handling is typically Porsche, and claims of it being a baby 911 ring true, at least in my opinion. So considering you'll get one for less than a 996 911, it's well worth it, especially if you want to kickstart your new life as a Porsche enthusiast. These are listed for a minimum of around £11,000, and 15 grand will get you a pre-facelift with around 65,000 miles on it. There is the fear of bore scoring on these, which did affect the 3.4 litre engine in the Gen 1S the most, and of course this can be horrifically expensive if it does happen to you, but the likelihood is still relatively low, as an estimated 5% of 987s have suffered this issue. In reality, maintenance is more expensive than the average car, but in general owners are very positive about them regardless. Onto the top 3 now, and in third it's the Nissan 370Z with its 3.7 litre V6 engine, putting out a very decent 323 brake horsepower, which gets it from 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds. It came as almost an entirely redesigned and re-engineered car over the 350Z, yet despite this, I think simply due to it being slightly more expensive, the 350Z appears to get more attention on forums, with the 370 being kind of just the car that followed the 350. In reality, it's much more capable and focused, being shorter and wider than its predecessors to hunker it down to the road, as well as with its use of more lightweight materials throughout, increased rigidity, and new suspension setup to massively increase handling. I've chased one around at a track day and it can easily hang with the likes of MX-5s and Caterhams through corners with the right driver at the wheel, and obviously blitzes many things in a straight line. And on top of this, I personally think it just looks nicer and more modern than the 350Z, both externally and internally, so all in all a very decent offering that shouldn't be overlooked. These are listed for around £8,000 at the lower end, and 15 grand will get you a decent example with under 50,000 miles on it. The key problems noted on these are steering lock and clutch pressure failures, as well as thin paint and fuel starvation when turning corners sharply on low fuel, so nothing hugely critical other than the clutch, but worth noting if you're in the market for one. Just missing out on the top spot is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated cars on this list, the Mercedes SLK55 AMG with its 5.4 litre V8, putting out 354 brake horsepower, which takes from 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds, making it the quickest car on this list too. This is the second generation SLK, and as a general rule, this whole line of cars often unfairly gets branded as hairdressers cars or whatever you want to call them. In reality, the car is actually quite punchy in the majority of its specs, with a focus on rigidity and aero by Mercedes, but the SLK55 AMG is particularly special. It doesn't just have an AMG body kit and oversized engine, it gains the full AMG package with sportier lowered suspension, bigger brakes, 18-inch alloys and quad exhausts. If you get the performance pack, you can get composite brakes too. It looks not too dissimilar to a baby SLR if you squint quite a bit and stand far away, and just in general the car really is a straight up legitimate AMG sports car despite its smaller size. Alongside the Peugeot, this is the most expensive car on the list, with examples starting at around £14,000, and for your £15,000 you're looking at around 50,000 miles on the clock. In terms of reliability, uneven idling and oil leaks are the two main things to look out for, as well as the transmission fluid levels, as though the gearbox has been praised, it will very easily overheat. Everything around the front suspension is also worth checking, as the engine is quite big considering the size of the car and its components. Taking the top spot is a car I've spoken about in a few videos that never fails to amaze me, the Jaguar XKR with its 4.2 litre supercharged V8, putting out a massive 420 brake horsepower, which takes it from 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds. Not bad at all for a car of this size. When I talk about this car being underrated, I specifically mean for younger drivers. As I've proven in a video a while back, these are actually surprisingly cheap to insure compared to many other performance cars young drivers actually get into, in part because no other young drivers really consider these. It is fundamentally a big Jag, so I understand it might not be the first place someone under 25 might be looking, but considering the performance mixed with that luxurious interior and, in my opinion, very attractive and sporty looks, I'm all for it. The main issue I would personally have is running costs, as it's £580 on road tax alone, which is not enjoyable. And though it's noted by Jag specialists as being quite reliable, coolant pipes below the supercharger have been known to crack, so worth watching out, as repairs aren't cheap. These are listed for a minimum of around £11,000, and 15 grand will get you one with under 70,000 miles on the clock. I just think that for the money, these offer actually really decent performance and prowess with good looks, but don't get that much attention, so definitely underrated in my opinion. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do hit the like button, I would really appreciate it, and subscribe as well if you're new. Again, a huge thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and as well to the patrons for their continued support, and obviously as well to you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.